My name is Adam Monticelli. I am Peyton Monticelli's father, and I live in Cedarburg, Wisconsin.
Okay. So where does our family call home?
Our family has called home in a couple different places. Of course, you being born in England, so we've called that place home. As we always say, our home is where our heart is. So we've had our heart in many places. We've lived in England as our home, in Washington State as our home, where your brother was born, of course, in Florida, and now here in Cedarburg, Wisconsin.
You forget about New York?
Well, yeah, that was such a short period of
I'm
time.
just joking.
Sorry.
I'm just joking. Okay, so how many generations from our family have lived in the United States from your side of the family?
So from my side of the family, my my uh, dad's parents were first generation American Italians. And then, so that would be one. And then my father, two. And then me, three. So we would be third generation here. And then grandma's side, um, my great grandma was first, then my grandmother, then my mom, and then me. So there's been four generations on my mom's side and three generations on my father's side.
Awesome. Do you have any family traditions, types of religious celebrations or like rites of passage, that would be like a Monticelli thing?
Um, I think earlier on when I was born, and then as I was growing up into probably my younger teenage years, our family Christmases um, were certainly very traditional, and by traditional I mean several traditions that were more based around Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Christmas Eve we would have all of our extended family over to my grandparents' house, and we would get together with all the aunts and uncles and cousins, and we would a Santa would always make his way to grandma's house at one point or another, and all the kids would happen to be we our parents and aunts and uncles loved to have the kids put on shows for them, so we would always have to be Christmas caroling, or we would have to do one of those things, and that was, of course, after we would go to church at about 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and then we'd make our way home, and then we'd carol at the house, and then lo and behold, knock, knock, knock on the door. Santa Claus would come in, and he'd have a bag full of presents for all the kids that were there. Um, and then Christmas Eve would wrap up, and then Christmas morning was really just a time for our family, mom and Auntie Krista and I to be together and share in Christmas morning. As far as other real traditions, I mean, our family has always been about holidays, whether it's July 4th, picnicking, whether it's Thanksgiving. We've always been very um, focused around, I guess, your standard holidays. I don't think that we've had anything really specific with regards to our heritage being Italians or Germans or Norwegians. So more just traditional around your traditional holidays.
Awesome. I know I appreciate the holidays too.
We all do.
Yeah. How would you describe like the behaviors of family members growing up and like what you can remember about like how your grandparents behaved and like how they acted and how you kind of took how they acted and like either used it or like didn't use it?
So, well, I spent more time with my mom's family, as my parents were divorced when I was pretty young, when I was about 1 years old. So, speaking more specifically to that part of my family, um, my grandma was Lois Craig was her name. She was the best grandma in the whole wide world. I remember whether I was sick at school or having a sick day, and my mom was working. We would spend days over at Grandma's house, and she would make us homemade cucumber sandwiches, which is very traditional. It's not your standard sandwich or a tomato sandwich, sliced tomato sandwiches. She would make homemade chicken noodle soup for us. She was just the sweetest. Every Sunday, we would have a Sunday roast at her house, which is not very traditional nowadays. But as far as who she was as a person, I would like to think that um, I I like to carry her care and comfort that she gave to all of us grandkids. And I like to think that I do that for you and your brother and for mom, and try to bring that forward. My grandpa, now remember, I was born in 1976. So my grandpa was a 1940s and 50s and 60s husband and father. And back in those days, they pretty much worked. They got up in the morning, breakfast was made for them. The women stayed home. They took care of the house, took care of the kids, took care of the meals, the shopping, all the things. Mostly, that's not to say everyone, but mostly. And my grandpa was not. I don't want to say he wasn't present. He was just a very 1950s and 60s man. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't have fun with him, because I have very fond memories of my grandpa. It was just different. It wasn't as engaging as my grandmother was. So I don't know if I've really carried any of his traits forward with me. He also died when I was very young. I was 8 years old when he passed. Um, and although I was 12 years old when my grandma passed, those are my fondest memories of my grandparents.
Thanks for sharing those.
Of course.
Okay, so this kind of goes more into like the diversity background and stuff.
Hmm.
From like a young age, do you remember the first interaction you had with someone who had a diverse background, a different race, ethnicity than you? Do you remember the first time you had a different interaction with someone
Dude,
like
I
that?
do. His name was Eric Bird. He was from Zion, Illinois. I grew up in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and he played hockey. Believe it or not. He was an African American young man. And I say believe it or not because hockey, you don't often see a lot of African Americans playing hockey. Even now, look at the NHL as the NHL playoffs are on, and there aren't many, maybe a handful. And as far as diversity goes, growing up in Kenosha, Wisconsin, now it is a kind of a halfway point between Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Chicago, Illinois. And it's grown from when I was a kid. It only had 20 or 30,000 people in it. Now it has about 180,000 people in it. So it's grown from a farming community, American Motors, which back in the day was kind of the mothership for Chrysler, Daimler Chrysler. American Motors was Kenosha, Wisconsin is a port city, so it's on one of the Great Lakes on Lake Michigan. So it was a big labor community, unions and labors, factories. So we believe it or not, we were very, our community is very Italian and very German. So Italian Fest, German Fest, all of those traditional festivals, they were very large in my hometown, a farming community. So we didn't have a lot of diversity with regards to, excuse me, with regards to racial diversity. Now we had a lot of diversity with regards to European descendants, but just not a lot of racial diversity. So I would say I was probably And that goes for my high school as well. I graduated high school in 1994, and there was not a lot of racial diversity there either. Eric Bird was on my hockey team growing up at age 15. So 15 years of kind of being non racially diverse.
Got you, got you. Um, did you ever have like any sort of level of discomfort with people of different races, ethnic backgrounds, or anything?
No, because spending almost 20 years in special operations and retiring from the military, diversity diversity was a part of our fabric of who we were as Americans and as military members, fighting. 9/11 happened when I was about halfway through my career in the military. I spent many years deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq, and other places all over the world because of my job within the military. So diversity was something that we were used to, and it didn't matter because the beautiful thing about the military is we all focused on one goal, and our one goal we all focused on. So it didn't matter your skin color, it didn't matter your upbringing, it didn't matter if you were from Alabama, Wisconsin, Alaska, New York, didn't matter where you came from because you all created one bond. And for our bond in special operations, it was very simple. We were executing missions, and it didn't matter what your skin color was.
Oh, cool. When you were growing up and even like now, how have you seen gender roles and expectations change from like even like around the house or like in the workforce, you know?
Sure. Well, I think bringing up my grandma on my mom's side, that that gender role back in the, well, I mean, even before I mentioned in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, even prior to that, the gender roles were very specific. Men went to work and women stayed at home. Obviously, that couldn't be further from the truth now, and luckily so. I think with the gender roles changing over time, empowerment came along with that. And having you as my daughter and seeing all the great things that you do and all the opportunities that you have that are rightfully yours, because it's about freedom, and it's about your right to do just as any other person would do, no matter what your gender is. So absolutely, there's been change. It has been more so I believe it's been a education of whether it's voting rights, whether it's rights to the same salaries, whether it's rights to the same jobs. The only time that I believe that there's differences in that is when standards have to be changed for roles to be filled by other people, whether that's specifically speaking about my job in the military and special operations. We have very high standards of physical requirements because of the jobs that we do and the heavy packs that we carry. And they're, frankly, the men's body is just built differently than the woman's, and that's not anything other than the truth. The woman's body is very special for many reasons. I mean, a man's body can't have a baby, and God made us all a certain way for a certain reason. But as far as gender roles being different, absolutely, they've changed.